seek your glory. I seek your honor. I seek your goodness, Lord, and my desire is for you. I seek your glory. I seek your honor. I seek your goodness, Lord, and my desire is for you.
I felt like the Lord was sharing with me, and I'll just repeat it. I think Joshua had mentioned earlier, as I was studying about the scroll of the book, the scroll of the Lord. And I felt like the Lord told me very clearly that this is going to be a journey for all of us. So what I'm going to do tonight is to give you kind of a brief, basic understanding of what it is, the scroll of the book, and then I believe that it's going, the understanding, the unfolding of it is going to be in the days to come. So is that okay with you? We're all going to be part of the journey. So it's not just one or two of us studying about the scroll and trying to teach. I think all of us are going to learn and share and instruct and teach what God is showing us about this wonderful, wonderful subject. So if you will allow me, I'm going to read a few scriptures at first, and just to kind of give you a basis, then we'll make some statements, and then we'll go from there, okay? In the book of Psalms, chapter 40. Let me give you a little bit of background, because in chapter 40, in fact, it's really my favorite chapter. It has become my testimony. When David said in verse 1, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me. He heard my cry. He brought me out of a horrible pit, the miry clay. He set my feet up. He established my going, set my feet upon a rock, put a new song in my mouth. And in all of David's life, so you've got to remember, this is David, who was king, had made some colossal failures, and yet it was even after his failures that he is called a man after God's own heart. Is that incredible? And then it makes it even more significant that he comes to this verse, chapter 40. And you know what? Because it's so meaningful, I'm going to start in verse 5. Many, O Lord my God, are the wonders which you have done, and your thoughts toward us, there is none to compare with you. If I could declare and speak of them, they would be too numerous to count. Think about that. Sacrifice and meal offerings you have not desired. My ears you have opened. Burnt offerings and sin offerings you have not required. Then I said, and here's the verses. Then I said, behold, I come. In the scroll of the book, it is written of me. David's talking about himself. It is written of me. Now later, this prophetic verse is given in Hebrews chapter 10, speaking of the Lord, but it can refer to any believer. The scroll, the scroll of the book, it is written of me. So there's a book that's written. I delight to do your will, oh my God. Your law is within my heart. I believe this book is within us. It's in our heart. It's in our DNA. I have proclaimed glad tidings of righteousness in the great congregation. I will not restrain my lips. O Lord, you know. Now, I'm going to turn to one of the two of the verses, and I'm going to give you some concepts regarding this. I'd like to turn to Psalms 139. Psalms 139. And I'm going to begin reading in verse 13. I'm going to read several verses to begin with to kind of give you the base of this. It says, for you formed my inward parts, David said. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book they were all written, the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. Wow. Now, turn to Psalms chapter 56. And you can write these down because as you study, they're going to be really, really important for you. chapter 6, verse 8. Because you've taken account of my wanderings, David again writing, put my tears in your bottle. Are you aware there were 12 places that David wandered before he became king of Judah? And we have a teaching on that, the 12 wanderings of David. God was building character. My tears you put in a bottle, and are they not in your book? And then I have one other scripture. That is Psalms 56, verse 8. Then I have one other scripture I want to read, and we'll go from there. And that's in the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah, chapter 1. An incredible verse in which God has called Jeremiah. And in verse 4, now the word of the Lord came to me, to Jeremiah, saying, behold, I have formed you in the womb, or before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. See that word knew? It actually means I observed you. I saw you. I analyzed it. I considered it. Before I formed you, before you were born, I consecrated you. I have ordained or appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Then I said, alas, God, behold, I do not know how to speak because I'm a youth. But the Lord said to me, do not say I'm a youth, because everywhere I send you, you shall go, and all I command you, you shall speak. Aren't those incredible scriptures? I mean, the idea that God has a book is called a scroll, same thing. And this scroll is for you and for me. Now, there are probably many books that are listed, but this scroll was written, designed before you were born. Before you even formed in the mother's womb, it said not only did God know it, that he saw you, he planned your destiny, he knew what would be the conflicts, the adversaries against you, and he prepared for you. That's pretty remarkable, is it not? Now, I want to say something about this book, and I'm just going to give an introduction into it. That's all. Because I feel like in the days to come, there will be many different ones you're going to get insight if you haven't already. And you're going to be able to share those insights, and we're going to learn together. As I read about this scroll of the book that we're given, there are different, some people who have ascended, engaged heaven, talk about a room where there are scrolls in which God gave that to them. And then I have others, who have said different experiences. And I don't judge any of that, because what I realize that there probably is more than one scroll. And I think I can at least begin to show, and there are scrolls that God gives us. So let me just kind of define what I think 2 or 3 of these scrolls might be. I do think there's a scroll that is probably given to us when we're born from above. And I like what Audrey was saying. It's kind of like our birth certificate. I mean, why wouldn't it be? And it's like he gives us a new heart, a new nature. We're a new creation. And I think we're born again from that precious blood of Jesus, which is a gene of a unique kind. I believe that we receive a new DNA, spiritual. I believe that eventually can be our new DNA in our body. And so when we're born from above, we receive the scroll of the book that was been written, observed about us before we were ever born. And when in the world did that happen? So some of these things, I'm not saying I have everything down to the T, okay? But the scripture says that we were crucified with Christ, we were buried with Christ, and we were raised with Christ. Well, when did that happen? Well, we would say 2,000 years ago. But what is interesting, it says that Christ was slain before the foundation of the world. It happened in time 2,000 years ago about, but in eternity and in God's plan, because in eternity there is no time. In fact, in eternity, if you have ever moved and ministered in the Spirit in that heavenly realm, you will find that sometimes, like in our time, you feel like you're going backward, other times forward, because in Revelation chapter, I believe it is 5, it says, and I saw the Lamb standing before, as if slain, standing before the throne, as if slain, standing, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God. Before we were ever framed, before we were ever in the womb, God saw us, He observed us. So I don't quite have that understood yet, so I'm going to not try to define what I think it is, but I personally believe that somewhere in eternity, that God saw, designed, planned, and gave us our scroll and purpose in our heart, in our DNA, in our new nature. I think our body that He designed coincided with that. And so we receive that. Now, we don't all understand it. But somewhere through life in our walk, we begin to discover it. We begin to walk it out. Now, some of us who are living more of a soulish life, sometimes we receive stuff from our own natural DNA. When I worked, especially in a Christian psychiatric hospital on behavior addictions, we realized that there is such a thing as a person would have tendencies towards certain behaviors and addictions based upon even the genetic makeup of their forefathers. And they call it genograms. And you could see it. It's pretty easy to see in generations how these things go. But see, I believe in our new generation in Christ. And our new DNA makeup, in the new spiritual, that can be changed because God gives us a new, and it will be changed. So one, there is a book of life or a scroll of the book that is given you for your destiny, for your life, I believe, when you are born from above. Others may disagree. That's not a point of disagreement with me. It's one I'm still learning about. Now, I need to say something about that book, because I have 2 other books I know at least, I believe, are in existence. And the book that I believe we receive at salvation, at the new birth, has a main purpose in it. Now, in all of our life, he says, your wanderings are written in the book. Well, David's talking about his wanderings, 12 of them, before he became king of Judah. Those wanderings were not to destroy him. Those wanderings were to prepare him to be king. He went through 12 of them. 12 is the number of government. Always remember, it's very, very important. The number of government. Those were character qualities that God built in him. But let me tell you something. Of all their ways of God, their paths of God. In fact, it tells us not to forget the ancient paths. I started to minister and teach on that tonight. That'll have to be another time. But if God designed us, what did He design us for? We're talking about this book from salvation is really the long-range plan of God. I call it the long range. And I like some terms I've heard Daniel use, others, the end game. It's really not an end, but what is the end game? What is the ultimate purpose in that long range scroll of the book? It may surprise you. See, a lot of people want the scroll of the book. Well, what kind of house am I going to live in, and how much money am I going to have? And I'm not saying those aren't concerns of the Lord, but the long range scroll is far more than that. In fact, it is so important. Let me tell you what it includes. Yes, it can include those things, but it includes, in the book of Hebrews, it says that God has called many sons to glory. Now, I'm not going to get into a teaching on that. We've had some, but He's called many sons. That is male and female. In Christ, there's neither male nor female. But He says, those who follow the Spirit, those who follow the Spirit are sons of God. Is that it? Those who follow after the Spirit are sons of God. Well, quickly, who are these sons? Because in the Scriptures, they're children, They're young men, but they're sons. When was a person called a son? When Paul wrote this in Romans, when the writer of Hebrews, and then also in Romans 8, Paul's those who follow after the Spirit are the sons of God. When a person in the Jewish economy reached about 30, wasn't always that age because if they were not mature enough. But when the father saw that that son was mature enough, they received their inheritance. So it's not just like, hey, Dad, I'm 30. Give me my inheritance. That's what the prodigal son did. He said, Father, give everything to me that's coming to me. He kind of jumped the gun. But see, they didn't wait till they died to get the inheritance. They gave it usually at the age of 30 or before, depending on their maturity. There was even an official document that they would receive, and that's called adoption. So a lot of time we talk about a person being adopted today as being born again. No, that's a birth. When you're saved, that's a birth. But the adoption is when the Spirit of God recognizes you, that you are the Father, by the Spirit recognizes you are a mature son. Now, that needs to be discussed further. What is a mature son? I just want you to get that concept. I'm going to challenge you to do some without teaching it tonight. I'm going to challenge you to read the rest of Romans chapter 8. It is the most incredible chapter because it says that all of creation. So what is all creation? It's all creation. In the beginning, God created what? The heavens and the earth. All creation. What are they doing? They're waiting for the redemption or the revelation, the manifestation of the sons of God. Wow. Have you ever thought much about that? The whole creation's groaning, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. Why this manifestation? There'll be such glory and such power and such presence that we will change the atmosphere around us. The early church in Rome, it was said that wherever they met, especially if it's a place where there were idols and all kind of demonic activities, that soon it was a place where those idols and demonic activity had to flee because of the presence of the Lord. Jesus said, the glory that I had with the Father, I'm giving it to you. Get that. So God is bringing us to a place. Yes, we're born again. And we can say, well, I'm a son and child of God. But in the most official biblical sense, a son is a person who's reached that age of maturity. And the Lord says, the glory that I had with the Father, I will give to you. And so that scroll is the journey, the document, the record, the plan, the promises of your journey to become a son. Some people's whole journey is, if I can just be a prophet, if I can just be an apostle. See, I came through an era of time when almost everyone wanted to be an apostle. Started out, you were a pastor. And, then you might, be a missionary, but to be a prophet. And then the whole thing, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher. But the scripture says those are only until the fulfillment of all things, or the fullness of the stature of Christ. When the body starts coming into maturity in Christ, guess what? That's where the sons of God are going to minister. And sometimes people will say, well, they'll ask you, are you a prophet? Or, well, you may move in that ministry, but guess what? I think every one of us will be all five. Is that hard to take? We're going to move in that kind of power. But we're not there yet, but that's our journey. That's what the first scroll that God is talking about, that he'll bring many sons and daughters to maturity, and that we will move as sons. We call it sonship. We're not there. But you know what? That's where this age is coming. Many things, the whole creation is going to be affected. Longevity of life, healing of the body, the soul thriving in fullness and joy, the Spirit powerful. I think it will be even like Peter and John, who walked on their way to the temple. People, by their very presence and shadow, were being healed. It's not too far away. It's not too far from possibility. I'm telling you, if you read some of the news as I do, I used to be a news addict, and I've kind of let a lot of that go. But there's such an incredible, it's not a fear, but it's just a concern of what's happening in our age. The nuclear weapons that's now being proliferated around the world, and the number of them. But the greater the enemy is, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will raise up a standard against him. So I'm going to tell you something. We're going to need to run onto these other scrolls, or part of other scrolls. And that is, I think we're going to enter new dimensions of prayer that are going to boggle our mind. We're going to enter into realms of praying for people. And some of you have already experienced this. I've begun to experience it. You know, I've always, for years, I would pray fervently, kind of horizontally, oh God, or sometimes I'd pray like this, oh God, do this. And you know what, in wonderful grace he did. But recently, I've been learning to pray from the heavenlies, that we can go to the mountain of the house of the Lord, that we can pray from that place of his throne room and pray toward. And we can say, and if it's God's will, if it's not, it doesn't work. But if it is, we're able to pray from a new dimension. We're going to see that. And so, in this first scroll of the book, the end game is going to be that we'll bring us as sons. And though that includes, that can include where you were born and what you did and the wanderings in your life, even the tears through many tribulations. We enter the kingdom. Hey, don't think God doesn't preserve your tears. And I'm sure there's a lot of incredible insight about the tears and the bottle that he holds them in, because God will bless those and God will use those. So yes, he knows all about our journeys. It's a scroll of the book. But the end game is to bring us to this sonship where we have the glory of the Lord. That is in the first scroll. Wow, there's so much more. But I'm going to share this, your family. And yesterday, for about an hour, the Lord started this some weeks ago, that someone from the cloud of witness came to interpret scriptures to me. And I was so amazed, because sometimes when it would happen, I would be shared things I'd never thought about, never would have thought about. And for years, since I'd started studying Revelation, there were 2 chapters chapter 7 and chapter 8, that I've read commentaries, ancient Christian commentary, all kind of books. And I thought, yeah, maybe, And when that cloud of witness interpreted them, I thought, wow, I would have never thought of this. This is the most amazing thing. I was amazed, because you know what it has to do with? Sonship. Sonship. That's all I want to say right now, okay? Not to make you feel frustrated, but it is so awesome. And I sit there just almost in tears and saying, God, I thank you. And then, as my background, real kind of that fundamental, and though I praise God for those wonderful, sweet people, and yet, boy, I would really search the scriptures, and I think that's wise. And I would search, and I'd say, but God, when I start hearing about cloud of witness, begin to experience, I think, but can they instruct? I mean, can they teach? Wouldn't you agree that around the throne, the 24 elders, some have said they're probably the 12 apostles and 12 tribes of Israel, sons? I think that's probably true. They would certainly be in the cloud of witness as well as others. And you know what is interesting? Because out of those elders who would be a part of the cloud of witness, and there are others, but out of that cloud of witnesses, it's interesting that when John didn't understand something, guess who came and interpreted it to him? He said, I began to weep greatly because no one was worthy to open the book, this seven seal book, or to look at the seven seals. And one of the elders came to me saying, do not weep. Behold, the lion that's from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome, so it's opened the book and its seven seals. That's interpretation. I was reading another verse, and it said, and all the angels, first that great throng in heaven worshiped the Lord, and all the angels were standing around the throne and around the elders and four living creatures and around the throne, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and glory be to our God who sits on the throne forever and ever. And one of the elders came to me and said, these are clothed in white robes. Who are they and where do they come from? This is one of the elders in the heavens. And John says, I don't know, my Lord. Thou knowest. You tell me. And he said, the elder, cloud of witness, these are the ones who have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. They have come out of great tribulation. For this reason, they will stand before the throne, and they will serve him day and night. And he who sits on the throne will spread his tabernacle over them, and they will hunger no longer nor thirst any more, neither will the sun be beat down, nor any heat. But the Lamb in the center of the throne will be their shepherd and will guide them to the springs of water of life. And God will wipe away every tear from their eye. Well, who gave that? It was one of the 24 elders. For the cloud of witness, our great host of heaven. Anyhow, I'm going too long on that. So you have a scroll of the book. The end game is God's journey for you to become a mature son of God and his glory to be shared with you. But in that journey there will be wanderings and tears because through many tribulations we enter the kingdom. But we know that God works everything together for good to those who love him, to those who are the called according to his purpose. Let me tell you about our second book. It's the scroll of the book, but this particular one, I call it short term. Now, is it a part of the long term? It could be. But in the book of Ezekiel, you may want to just turn there. The book of Ezekiel. It's so interesting. Ezekiel, actually, it begins. Almost got my. Ezekiel chapter 2. It begins in verse 8. And it goes through chapter 3. I'm not going to read all of the scriptures. But if I can find it here, I had it marked at one time. Here we go. Anyhow, it starts in chapter 2. And it's interesting. It seems like an angel or the Lord appears to Ezekiel and is talking to him. And in verse 8, he says, now you, son of man, listen to what I am speaking to you. Do not be rebellious like that rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I'm going to give you. Verse 9, Ezekiel 2. Then I looked, and behold, a hand was extended to me. And in it a scroll was in it. And when he spread it out before me, it was written on the front and the back. Sounds like Revelation chapter 4, and written on it were lamentations, mourning, and woe. Then verse 1, chapter 3. Then he said to me, son of man, eat what you find. Eat this scroll and go speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he fed me this scroll, and he said to me, son of man, feed your stomach and fill your body. In other words, interpret it, digest it, really meditate on it. Fill your body with this scroll which I'm giving you. Then I ate it, and it was sweet as honey in my mouth. And he said to me, son of man, go to the house of Israel and speak my words to them. Sometimes the Lord may give us a scroll, and I don't know if it's a part of the long time scroll, but I would call it more of a short time scroll, and it's a special mission with a special message to a special people. They said, take it and eat it. It's going to be like honey in your mouth, but in your stomach it's going to be bitter. Now, could it be part of the long term? It could fit in there somewhere. But sometimes God may come to us and he may give us a mission, a ministry, a message to a people for a short time. And unusual how he'll get us there. Now, let me give you one other. And the one other is very similar to the short term, but it seems like it's a completion of, and it's in Revelation chapter 10. It seems like a completion of the long term. And so that's the reason if I seem a little vague on this, I am, except I know there's a long term. It seems to be given at salvation, could be given later. Sometime when people have heavenly experiences and they go into a room and a scroll is given to them. You know, I don't understand all that. We will, but I know I've experienced where a scroll was given to me, but I understand it. So long term, short term, mission, message. But there may be a scroll. It's a smaller scroll, but it is given for the continuation. Now listen to this. The continuation of God's ministry in you, but also for someone else. So will you turn with me? This may kind of surprise you. In Revelation chapter 10. It's very important to read this because I want to not go too long, and I just want to kind of get it introduced. Revelation chapter 10, beginning in verse 8. And this is where he saw an angel standing on the sea and on the land having a book in his hand. And in chapter 8 it says, "Then the voice which I heard from heaven I heard again, speak with me and saying, go take the book," or the scroll, "which is open in the hand of the angel who stands on the sea and on the land." So I went to the angel, telling him to give me the little book. And he said to me, "Take and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey." I took the little book out of the angel's hand. Have you ever heard people say you should never command an angel? Well, that's exactly what John did here. Now, he only can command what God tells him to, but he does command. So I went to the angel telling him to give me the little book. Psalms 103, you can read that. "Take it and eat it." Now the angel's commanding him. "It will make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey." I took the little book out of the angel's hand and I ate it. And in my mouth it was sweet as honey. And when I had eaten it, my stomach was made bitter. And they said to me, "You must prophesy again concerning many peoples and nations and tongues and kings." Again. Now I want to read one of the verses up before that. In verse 6, the same chapter. "That the angel which I saw standing on the sea and on the land," that was in verse 1, "that the lifted up his right hand toward heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven, the things in it, earth, the things in it, and the sea and the things in it, that there will be delay no longer. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel," that's yet to come. I can read it to you later. It's in chapter 11. "But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God is finished, as he preached to his servants, the prophets." Now, I don't know what the message was. That this little book, it's a message. It's to complete something, is it not? You're to prophesy again. So it's a completion of something that hadn't been finished. Are you ready for this? Right before that, he said, in the beginning of the voice of the seventh angel, the mystery of God is finished, as his servants, the prophets, preached. Are they the same group? Could be. But let me share something that's very, very important that Jesus said. Remember where Jesus said that you will, to the disciple, you will reap where you have not sown? Have you read that? But now you're reaping where you've not sown. For the laborers, those who labor, for others have labored, and you have entered into their labors. You ever read that? It's in the Gospel of John. Others have labored, but you have entered into their labors. Well, isn't that interesting? This is exactly what was happening to John. When he took that little book, it says, you must prophesy again, concerning many tribes, tongue, people, and kings. Well, who prophesied in the first place? He says, which he spoke through his Spirit or his prophets. You mean he is to prophesy again? I think so. Because in Hebrews it says that you're come to Mount Zion. And in that sevenfold description of different things you've come to, he said, to the spirits of just men made perfect, complete. They're complete within themselves, they're complete within their message, but that ministry, that prophetic ministry may not have been completed yet. And in God's timing, he will call people from this or a generation to complete that prophetic word. And they will be given a little book. It's a scroll. It may not be physical, but he'll put that message within them. Now that's pretty powerful. But think of the living reality that we have as the children of God. See, we're not playing something. So many people of days past, at least in the culture that I was in, if you got saved, that was our Baptist, and I loved it. I mean, wonderful, it's great. Sometimes I miss the old songs, but you get saved, and from then on, it's like the next step is heaven. It was kind of a culture of death. Nobody could see heaven is when you die. And really spiritual people, if you were really spiritual, you'd be called to be a preacher. And, if you were kind of next in line, maybe a missionary. And then it's pretty good if you could be a Sunday school teacher. And it was pretty good if you could be a deacon. But you know what? I used to have experiences as a child. And twice I heard the verbal voice of God. Probably in an old cottonseed bin is where I spoke in tongues for the first time. And I'd heard so many messages, all of the devil. I was afraid to tell anyone. And in a near-death experience in which the doctor said, Mr. and Mrs. Cross, I'm sorry, your son's not going to make it. I was looking down from the ceiling. I didn't understand it. I would know things before they ever happened. It continued for years. I knew it wasn't just a psychic thing. But God was probably giving me a word of knowledge in other areas. But I didn't understand it because we had no grid for it. But we're moving in a day where that's changing. You don't condemn. I'm so grateful for a lot of that heritage. But I'm telling you, in the last days, knowledge will speed up. Not only the secular, but in the spiritual. And we're coming into a day now when there are heavenly dimensions and experiences that it will almost rock your mind. Well, that's what's happening in Revelation. The heavens are being opened. God is calling us not only to hear, but he said that Jesus did nothing but what he saw the Father doing. And so, don't be surprised if God isn't more and more going to bring those in the cloud of witness to give interpretation, to give understanding, to explain. And it isn't something you brag about. You don't worship those people. But, all the time people talk about demons and how you renounce them and what they do. And isn't it amazing? You don't worship them. Well, so you can talk to the angelic. You can listen. You can be grateful. You don't worship them. But anyhow, isn't that interesting that this angel interpreted the scroll? But the third scroll was a continuation of a prophetic ministry that was needed because they were not made complete without us, it says in Hebrews chapter 11. And I was so surprised. Someday I'll have to tell you more of the full story. I'm not given the permission to yet. But when this particular one came in the cloud of witness, I was really uncertain. And that's a whole different story. But I have been amazed at some of the explanation. As I said, I would just be sitting, not necessarily thinking, and the thoughts would come to me of revelation. And I would think about it. I thought, wow, I never thought about that. And of course, I check things out with word study scripture. So let me kind of conclude something, and then I want at least I'm gonna go through not a sermon, but I'm just going to go real quickly through Isaiah chapter 40. But let me conclude and just review with you that there are a long-term scroll for your life. There is a seemingly a short term that may be for a message, a time, an era, a place, and then there's one that may be for a continuation of a prophetic, of a ministry that was never completed. And, I have people who said they had the mantle of Catherine Kuhlman. Do you know who she is? That's okay. That could be, but I'm not sure everybody. And you should be careful. People should be careful about saying that, but I think there are people who may not have completed their ministries, and or the ministry has yet to be, and that the Spirit of that person made complete will also make complete their ministry through someone else. I mean, it's there. It's in the Scriptures. Now, let me go through Isaiah. I'm sorry, not Isaiah, but Psalms. Psalms chapter 40. How do you enter into this? Okay? Because a lot of questions we haven't answered. This is only to introduce. So let me introduce it, at least this much. But how do you, in the last year or two, I've really been crying out to the Lord. I said, God, what is the scroll of my book, the scroll for the rest of my life? I'll be 80 in October. So, Lord, what is that? And I think He's giving it to me. It's not that it is a long term, but I just would kind of like, don't know, more specific. But in Psalms 40, let me give you just a quick pathway. Verse 7, then I said, behold, I come. I think the first place is to make commitment. Behold, I come. Have you done that? I mean, we want this so much, we can say, behold, I come. Lord, I desire this. Desire has to be there, and there has to be faith. If you don't have faith and desire, you don't just sit around, well, I hope this happens. No, there has to be an urgency and a commitment. Behold, and He said, behold, I come, commitment. In the scroll of the book, it is written of me. It's okay to say, it's written of me. I'm to be specific, the scroll of the book. I delight to do your will, O our God. Verse 8. See that word delight? It's going to be surprised. You know what it means? It means to be pliable, to be soft, to do. I delight. Lord, I'm pliable. I want to do your will. I delight to do your will. Oh my God. This whole thing is about the will of God. The long term, it's about the will of God. Your law is within my heart. Your instructions, your ways, your purpose, your teaching, it's already in my heart. Eternity is in the hearts of men. I have proclaimed glad tidings of righteousness to the great congregation. I will not restrain my lips. And so when He says, I delight to do thy will, oh my God. So you may have a delight in something, but let me give you this quick scenario. Delight thyself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And I learned to move. This was a pathway for me years ago. I learned a pathway. Now, there's several pathways, but a pathway I learned. I would take a delight that I felt was in my Lord, in my heart. and I used to just start trying to speak it, and it didn't always happen. But I learned to take it to the cross. Delight thyself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of His heart. But the reason I take it to the cross, I said, God, bring this to the cross, because if this is not your desire, if it's not what you delight in, then I don't want it. So either take it back, or you can take it away or give it back. Sometimes I could hear within 1 hour, a few minutes. Sometimes it was a few days, because it was so strong within me, I couldn't hear. And so I would say, God, I bring you, this is my delights, this is my desire. But I bring it to the cross. Now, and I ask you, if it's you, give it back. Now, here's how I know when He gave it back. Because you will have a full assurance of faith. God will give you faith that it's He and that it will be fulfilled. I can't describe it. I have waited as long as 3 days. I didn't just run out and start something. I saw incredible wonders, miracles, and things happen, especially in a certain realm. I saw it happen week after week, month after month, actually year after year for several years. But this is how I learned. It's a path. It was an ancient path. It's only one. But I learned how to delight in the Lord, to put it on the cross, delight in the Lord. Lord, I delight in your gift, I delight in your will, not mine. Take mine away and put it, and then give it to me in my heart. And when he put it in my heart, he would usually give it with faith. Now let me tell you something else I did. I never just prayed for me. This is a great truth. Whenever Israel took the promised land, the 2 or 3 that was on this side of the Jordan could not embrace theirs until they went to the other side and help others. You cannot do this alone without others in the body of Christ. When we pray for Melchizedek Christian Church, guess what else we pray for? Other churches, but Belmont Church. We've been noticing more regularly that we're praying for Belmont Church as well as us. Whenever David put on the ephod, it had 6 stones on each side representing the 12 tribes of Israel. And he didn't just say, oh, God, please, poor little me. No, he prayed for all of Israel. That's the reason we say, our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. My Father, which art in, and it's always give us. And then there was, as he received it by faith. I can't describe it. You just know. I mean, you hear the whole thing. You know that you know that you know. I know it. It's just, you know. It's that assurance of faith. And usually, I wouldn't say this is for everybody, but God usually will give me a prophetic sign. He used to. He'd give a prophetic sign. And I could tell you a lot of stories. It hasn't happened that much. But when I was moving in some of this, he would give me a prophetic sign. And the prophetic, one day I called Dr. Hurst. And I said, Bill, why does God always give me this prophetic sign, yet there are some incredible answers? And he said, because it activates the spiritual realm. Now be careful. I've known people, when they heard this teaching about prophetic signs, they started moving and trying to do a prophetic sign to make something happen. Well, that's voodooism. You only do it because God tells you. You don't do it to make something happen. So that's the reason I'm real cautious. For 1 year, I drove around a certain city. It took 1 hour. Every year it was a prophetic sign, and the results were phenomenal. Now, if you just did that, say, well, man, I've heard Don did, so I'm going to drive around the city every week for a year, you may just wear your tires out. I mean, unless God says it. And if he has it, you'll know in a pretty short time. Anyhow, you're kind of getting the point? So I believe this will be a starter for us to receive the scroll of the book for our life, long term, for any message that is short term event, message place. It's more of a limited, but it's event, a place. Or like John the Apostle. I think there are times when the Lord will give us a continuation of a ministry that had not been completed. Now, we're not to name it. He names it. The one that came to me, I would not probably have chosen them because of things I had read. But it took a while for me to be comfortable. But it's become a very good friend. And just let the Lord plead the blood of Christ, receive his covering, and he will protect you. There have been several in the cloud of witness. Do you know what? It's the most wonderful journey. It's indescribable. I had no place for this in my grid. I had experiences of things in the past, but more and more people in the earth are beginning to experience these things. Some of them are afraid to say anything. They don't know how to explain it. They don't know. It's like people look at you, but let me tell you, it's coming like a small cloud. It will come a great move of God. How big, I don't know. But it's not so much a move. It's just what God is doing to prepare his people to live in these days in the earth. And it's so major that we need his help so much. Did you know that? So let's bow our heads.
Take me deeper. closer, Lord. Take me deeper. Draw me closer, Lord. Take me deeper. Take me deeper. Draw me closer, Lord. Take me deeper. Draw me closer, Lord. I seek your glory. I seek your glory. I seek your honor. I seek your goodness, Lord, and my desire is for you. I seek your glory. I seek your honor.